I know Andrew Bone knows some music. Now, he doesn't go back as far as I do, but we go to the Bud Light Hotline to welcome in Bone. But that's an iconic band from the mid-1970s, Bone. If you do know it, don't ruin the contest. But that's a rock and roll classic right there, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I recognize the voice, so I think I know who it is. But I'm not gonna let I'm gonna let your subscribers pick.
Yeah, don't let the cat out of the bag. But you're right.
Your listeners.
That is
your subscribers, your listeners.
Yeah, one of the great voices in rock and roll. Bone, of course, is recruiting reporter for Rivals.com, BamaInsider.com. He's been doing it a long time. He's the best in the business. And let's start before we get to the Champions Cookout over the weekend. Let's pick up with the latest Alabama commitment coming yesterday afternoon. Caden Clark, a 2020 tight end out of Akron, Ohio. This is a guy who been playing as a starter since he was in the 9th grade. He's going into his junior season, 6'5", about 245. Dan Enos, his recruiter. You know how Dan Enos likes those tight ends. And we remember Hunter Henry at Arkansas and what a dynamic player he was and is in the NFL. Tell me about Caden Clark, and is that the deal here? This is a guy Dan Enos wanted and offered a scholarship to, and he jumped on it.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. And a lot of people thought that he kind of came out of nowhere. And if you were reading our insider report on Monday morning on Bama Insider, we talked about Caden Clark as Alabama had several juniors who were on campus this past weekend for the Champions Cookout. And one of the guys that I kept hearing about was Caden Clark. Alabama really liked him a lot. That he was going to be one of Alabama's top targets in the 2020 class. He's a big kid. He's 6'4", 6'5", about, as you mentioned, about 240, 245 pounds. Just a big physical kid, somebody that Alabama's been really looking for a bigger tight end. Now, they've been able to get some really athletic tight ends in the last couple of recruiting classes. And, this year's class, Jaleel Billingsley, about 6'6", 220, 225 pounds. And now they get somebody who's very physical, great blocker. As you mentioned, has been starting since his 9th grade year. Now, his older brother, Danny Clark, is at Kentucky. He's a quarterback at Kentucky.
That's right.
And a lot of people thought, maybe Ohio State would be, pretty in with Caden Clark, but they actually ended up not offering him. And the reason behind that, a lot of people ask, well, why didn't Ohio State offer? Well, a lot of people don't know this, but if you don't follow Ohio State or Kentucky recruiting, Danny Clark was once an Ohio State commitment. And, it was one of those situations where, ended up having to kind of part ways. And you hate to use the word drop in the end, but Ohio State ended up getting, Tate Martell, and then they got Emory Jones. And it was kind of just a situation where, maybe it was best if he looked elsewhere. So he ended up looking elsewhere. I think it may have left a little bit of a bad taste in the Clark family's mouth, and
right.
there was just kind of no way that Ohio State and Caden Clark were ever going to work out. So I would never look at it as, Ohio State didn't offer him. There was a reason behind that, but he's a kid that Alabama liked a lot. Dan Enos does a terrific job of evaluating and recruiting guys. And, he was one of those guys that they really liked a lot. Jeff Banks, tight ends coach, special teams coach, also really liked him a lot. So they were really excited to get him on board yesterday. That gives Alabama 6 commitments in the 2020 class.
It sure does. I mean, you got some schools, good schools, that don't have 6 or 7 commitments for 2019, and Alabama's got 6 for 2020. Speaking of 2019, this class is coming together nicely. Now, Georgia's making a big push with some 5 stars, trying to possibly bump Alabama out of that top spot, at least at this point. But the Crimson Tide hosting that second Champions Cookout over the weekend. How did that go, Bone? What are some tidbits that you can give us from what happened over the weekend in Tuscaloosa?
Well, I thought it went well considering, what all was going on throughout the entire country. I mean, every single school just about was having some sort of recruiting event, and it was the only weekend that prospects in the entire month of July were able to go out and see a school. So
That's right.
A lot of prospects were having to pick and choose. They were having to pick one school. So some were able to get to more than one school. If they were close by, they were able to get to 2 schools. But majority of top kids throughout the entire country were only able to visit one school. And some of the top kids that Alabama had on campus are some of their top overall targets, including Darnell Wright, the number one offensive tackle in the country, and number one offensive lineman in the country overall. And, the biggest thing with Darnell was just getting him back on campus, but also having his mom on campus with him. It was his mom's first trip to Tuscaloosa. Now, she's visited a few other schools, Tennessee, Ohio State. He had never been to Alabama, and this was Darnell's third trip to Tuscaloosa. And, got a chance to speak to him a little bit, and he said, that was really the biggest thing for him, was getting his family on campus, letting them see everything that he's seen, and just getting them kind of comfortable with all the surroundings and everything. Now, a lot of people thought maybe he was close to making a decision. I talked to him, and I don't see a decision coming anytime soon. I think he's going to wait it out, maybe wait until December. He wants to take his official visits during the season and go to some games and experience those types of atmospheres. And I don't know if his mom's going to go back on trips with him. I believe she will, but he'll definitely get back to several schools, including Alabama, Tennessee, Ohio State. And there's some other programs that are out there that are heavily recruiting him, like Georgia and Clemson. But I don't think he'll go to any of those schools. I think it really ends up coming down to those three programs that I mentioned between Alabama, Tennessee, and Ohio State in the end. But Alabama did a terrific job. They rolled out the red carpet for him. I guess the crimson carpet, if you want to say that.
Yep.
But they did a tremendous job. And, from everything I was told, they did pretty much as they possibly could without it being an official visit. These official visits are special. I mean, you get the whole trip paid for, and you get so much attention and one-on-one time and free food and stuff like that, and your whole trip's paid for. Alabama pretty much did everything they possibly could without it being an official visit. So I know it was a great weekend for him.
Yeah, another guy, and I don't know that if he was in Tuscaloosa or on this weekend or not, but I get asked all the time. One of the hottest prospects from an Alabama fan standpoint, of course, is the running back Trey Sanders out of IMG Academy. Well, what's the latest on him, Bone?
Well, Trey did not make it to Tuscaloosa this weekend, and it wasn't because of him. His school, IMG Academy, decided to kind of shut down visits. IMG kids, they go to their school, and then during the summer, the IMG coaches say, all right, you have basically the whole month of June to take all your visits, enjoy the process, and then when you come back in mid-July, you're here.
Right.
And that's kind of the way it went this past weekend. A lot of people thought, IMG setting kids away from going to Alabama. No, they set kids away from going to Alabama, to Florida State, to Florida, Georgia, to Miami. None of their kids were taking visits this weekend. They were all back at IMG getting ready for their upcoming football season. So they had a lot of team activities this weekend. But I still feel pretty good about Trey Sanders getting back on board with Alabama. A lot of people assume that because his brother, Umstead Sanders, enrolled at Florida as a preferred walk-on, that was kind of a done deal for Trey to end up at Florida. And I don't think that's the case. I think Alabama's really starting to surge for him. I think they're in great shape to land his commitment. And whenever that may be, Trey could announce his commitment once we get off the phone, or he could announce in December. That's just the kind of guy he is. He doesn't really talk to the media that often. IMG had a big media day last week, and he was off limits. He didn't talk to anybody, so nobody was really able to kind of catch up with him and see where things stand. But we do know that Alabama is very high on his list, and I would be shocked as of right now. I'd probably be shocked if he ended up anywhere else.
All right, Bone, we got about a minute. Gosh, dog, it snuck up on us. Give me the quick Clay Webb update. The center guard prospect out of Oxford, another guy that Alabama fans want badly in this class. They're concerned about with Georgia in particular, and also Auburn. Any news on him?
Well, he took a visit to Clemson and to Georgia this past weekend. Visited Clemson on Friday, then went over to Georgia. Really just trying to keep his mind open and then make that decision probably in December. Alabama's still very high on his list, but they're also recruiting some other guys. Darian Dalcourt, an offensive lineman an interior guy who made it down to Tuscaloosa this past weekend. A new name to kind of keep an eye on for Alabama fans. And they may take him even if Clay Webb still wants to come, but Alabama's certainly putting themselves, making sure they have some other guys, waiting in the wings in case Webb goes elsewhere.
And 30 seconds, Bama fans not liking the fact that Georgia's been on a little bit of a roll lately, pushing Alabama. I think that's going to continue to be the norm with Kirby Smart there. What about commitment watch for the Crimson Tide? Anybody you think is close? You think Alabama might land a 2019 commitment anytime soon? Somebody maybe that you think is about to pull the trigger, if anyone?
Well, Dax Hill, the number one safety in the country, 5-star DB out of Oklahoma, planning on making a decision here pretty soon. I think it's between Alabama and Michigan. Very, very close race right now. So something to keep a close eye on over the course of the next few weeks.
Andrew Bone will keep you updated. Follow him on Twitter at Andrew J. Bone, Rivals.com, BamaInsider.com. He will let you know who's going where as soon as they make a decision, sometimes even before they do. Thanks a lot, Bone. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Gary. See you, man.